Debbie, and hello everyone. I'm delighted that all of you could dial in and participate over the internet as well. As Debbie mentioned, I am rather new to PHA, having just joined the staff at the end of November. And one of my early assignments that I've taken on is to manage the Lantos Community Service Award program. And I'm very excited about the program because it does put opportunities in the hands of people like you who are closest to the needs and the demands on people who are living with PH. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through this process and I have allowed for questions and answers at the end. If you feel you have a pressing question, it's okay with me if you'd like to stop me in the middle and ask. And so let me begin by showing you a new slide. I'm new to the technology, so it might take me a minute to get it in front of you.
There's usually a little bit of delay. There you go.
Can you see it? Yep. Okay, great. So the purpose of this session, basically, as Debbie mentioned, we want to introduce you to the Tom Lantos Innovation and Community Service Awards program so that you understand all of its components and what will be required of you and how your application will be viewed by those who are looking them over and making choices about which ones to fund. We want to help you hone your ideas. So Katie and Debbie and I, as representatives on the call, representatives of the PHA staff, are anticipating that you have some ideas in your minds. They may be at various levels of development, and that on this call this evening and also as we go forward in the next couple of weeks before the deadline, we are here to help you hone your ideas and answer questions and bring the development of these ideas to the highest level that you can get it to. We also want to offer you tips on the application process just so that you feel comfortable. It really is a very straightforward process, and so I think that you will feel comfortable when we've had a chance to go through all of this. Now, one of the first things I'd like to say before we get into why we're going to apply for a Lantos grant is I do want you all to know about Tom Lantos, who is the namesake of this program. Some of you may have already heard of him from your work in the PH community, but if not, Tom Lantos was for many, many years a congressman from Northern California, and he was very respected, did a lot in human rights, and the reason he's meaningful to us in the PH community is that his granddaughter developed PH as a young person, and he threw himself into learning about this and supporting as much as he could learning and advancement of knowledge about PH. And he, in fact, using his legislative capabilities, was the first to sponsor a bill, which we're still working through PHA to get through Congress, for more research and more education and public awareness about this disease of PH. Incidentally, his granddaughter, as you may know, has gone on to become an opera singer. She had a transplant, a lung transplant, and she's been very successful and has been to some degree public about her PH. So that's the person that we are commemorating with these grants. And as we go along, I'd like to talk with you about why I think it's valuable to apply for a Lantos grant. Basically, it's a chance for you people who are on the front lines and really understand PH from the inside out to make an impact on this community. You are the ones who see daily needs. They might be psychosocial needs. They might be medical needs. They might be needs for connecting with other people. They might be needs to educate the people around those who have PH. But those needs are bumping up against you all of the time, and that makes you excellent resources for making a mark on this community, for finding something that you know is striking a nerve with you is probably striking a nerve with many others. And so when you come forward with ideas, you are going to probably have the best thoughts about solutions as well. So we invite you to make your mark and to fill a need and to give back to this PH community. And developing replicable ideas in this process is also very important, because not only will you be able to make an impact in your community, but you will be then providing a model that people can use in other communities as well. And so that's becomes something of a gift that keeps on giving, so to speak. Now, one of the beauties of the program is that there are so many different ways to benefit the PH community. I mentioned a few a moment ago, and I just want to run through a few others to make sure that you all are exposed to the range of different types of ideas that would be relevant under this grant program. You might be working on lessening patients' isolation. You might think about expanding public understanding of PH, helping children and teens cope with PH. We've had several programs of that sort in the past which have been successful. Rallying your local community is always important in raising awareness. And reaching out to underserved populations is something we value quite a bit at PHA and that we struggle with because there are challenges in it. But if those of you out on the front lines have ideas to help us do that, we welcome your ideas as well. I'm going to take a minute to change slides here. Sorry for the delay. Okay, let's talk a moment about the funding behind this program. Our program is underwritten by Gilead, the pharmaceutical manufacturer who serves the PH community. And through Gilead's generosity, we have the opportunity to fund up to 10 different projects, each one at a maximum of $5,000. Now that does not mean you must ask for $5,000 for your project, but you may work with up to $5,000. There's also a nice little benefit within that, that $1,000 for a conference scholarship may be requested with each application, and that would leave $4,000 for your project. That is to say, the $1,000 is included in the $5,000 maximum. Of course, you've probably heard from PHA that we are having our biannual conference this year in June in Orlando, Florida. So the conference scholarship money is very relevant, and we hope you're thinking about coming to the conference, and that as you consider your application for the awards program, that you'll also think about coming to conference and taking advantage of this scholarship opportunity. The funding is important because it enables people in our PH community to raise awareness and to foster new community services to support one another. And it also allows the reach of existing innovative community services to go farther. And I think that's another important thing. When we talk about replicating and we talk about new twists and taking programs farther, this is another added benefit that this program gives us to just keep growing and keep reaching wider with our ideas about helping the PH community. So I think that's something you can feel very positive about as you think about your application. Now, you probably have some thoughts at this point about what you'd like to do with your project. And so I'd like to go on and start helping you to develop those ideas a little more fully. The key elements that you'd want to think about are basically what's asked for in your application. And they're a series of very basic questions that you want to be able to answer for yourself and ultimately put into writing to clarify your intent for the reviewers who will look at your application. These include, what does my project address? Of course, you want to be able to say very clearly what's the purpose there. What goals do I hope to achieve? You need to be specific about the 1 or 2 or 3, however many you've identified, that you believe this project will address. How will you reach your goal? What steps will you take? Who will you need to reach out to? What will you be doing? What actions will you take? Also, how can my idea be replicated? Reaching back to what we just talked about of making sure that there can be a continued long life for the ideas and developments that come out of your project. And of course, we would like you to think about how much your project will cost, and we'll be talking a little bit later about how to work on that question. Those are the broad questions, and we also want to help you think about a little bit more about some of the specifics that you will narrow down to as you prepare your application. We want you to think about some of the community resources that you might be able to use. These might include something like different ways of communicating, such as neighborhood listservs, other forms of communication, local cable TV, whatever way you might share ideas in your community. You might want to think about sites if you're having an event or a gathering. Maybe you need a big open public space. Maybe you need a meeting room, something like that, and that would be considered a community resource. You might want to think about sponsors who might want to donate items, whether they're supplies or little giveaways, little favors, that sort of thing, imprinted stuff, other things that you might want to have as part of your activity, whatever it may be. We'd like you to think about paid and volunteer help. Some projects do require a level of expertise that one generally needs to pay for. So you might need a graphic designer, for example, or you might need someone who can do some camera work. And those people may need to be paid. Sometimes you can arrange them as volunteers with special arrangements if they believe in your project and they'd just like to make a contribution to the community. Sometimes that can be done on a volunteer basis or at some special rate just to enable you to do this project. But those are two components. You're not likely to be able to do everything in your project alone, and so we'd like you to just be thinking about what combination of paid and volunteer help you will be using. It's also important to think about how much time you're going to need to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. And these projects generally run for a 12-month period, and so we will ask you to talk about how you will get your steps completed within that 1-year period. But time is an important factor because very often it's easy to underestimate how much time we might need for a given task. And it's important to think about leaving yourself a little bit of a time cushion so that you won't be too tightly budgeted on time and develop stress and deadlines that are really causing you problems. I'd like to talk a little bit about the money part of the application because we do ask for you to write a budget. And I'm hoping that thinking about budgeting a project of a few $1,000s up to $5,000 does not sound like an intimidating prospect. I know for some people you may have applied for other types of grants that may have been larger, and some of you may never have applied for anything of this nature, and so people may approach this process from very different points of view. But again, we want you to think of the budgeting as a very straightforward process, that it is essentially another way to explain your project. It sort of shows an additional dimension is how are we going to do it, who's going to do it, when is it going to be done, and how much will it cost. And that sort of gives a full image of the entire thing. Basically what we will want you to do is create the budget by itemizing all your costs. So that might be materials, it might be services as we discussed before, it could be distribution such as U.S. mail or FedEx or any kind of online costs that you may have for services online. But all of these pieces need to be thought through and brought out into your budget. And basically a little bit of research is generally all that's needed to figure out what kind of budget numbers you need to put there. I would recommend the same type of research that you would use if you were researching, for example, airline flights or other types of travel, other types of commitments that you might want to make where you're just being a good consumer and you're finding out how much it costs. Even something like how much would it cost to have an electrician come in and do a repair work. You might cost it out and call 3 different electricians to give you an estimate. That sort of thing I think is as far as you probably need to go in getting a realistic number for these components. The other thing we want you to be careful of when you're budgeting is to match your budget to the narrative, or that is to say, the written description of what you're going to do. That you should go through with a fine-tooth comb through what you're planning to write in the narrative and look for each piece whether there is a cost involved. And just make sure that each narrative item that you mention also has a corresponding budget item so you don't end up with hidden costs that could create some concerns along the way. Now, when it comes to writing up your plan, again, we want you to take a very straightforward and practical perspective. We're going to be looking for you to tell us what need you're going to fill, the steps that you will take, and also giving us some background about your involvement with PH. We'd like to know how you've been drawn into the community of PH patients and families and caregivers, and what has led you to devise this project. That's going to help us put it in context and understand where you've been and where you'd like to go. Finally, we'd like to ask you to give your project a name. And I think this is not only handy, but it helps to summarize your project, and it helps to make it memorable. And you're going to need that over and over again as you go forward with your project. You're going to need to have a quick description of it. So if you give that project a name now, you're going to be ahead of the game. In my professional circles of public relations, we often talk about giving a name as giving your project a brand. And so that brand will be recognized, and it's just sort of an extra way to give some strength to what you've done. Now, when you're writing, you definitely want to do your best to assure that the reviewers who read this can understand you and your project. So you're going to want to strive for maximum clarity. You're going to want to include some facts that document the need, and maybe give observations or use relevant numbers that you may have at hand to tell a story. But basically to explain what is behind this need that you are filling, how you have become aware of it, and how you can prove that it exists. We also want to see you showing passion for your project. And I think show is the operative word here. I've been through lots of writing exercises because I write a lot in my career, and one of the little sayings that has often been used to teach me good writing is to show, don't tell in your writing. So of course you feel strongly. That doesn't mean we necessarily want to read sentences that are all about your emotions, but that more like why it's important to you, help us understand your motivation for doing this project. And that's, I think in that sense, we will come to understand your passion. We recommend that you have someone unfamiliar with your project read it when you've got a draft done and have them comment. We just think that objective feedback is always very valuable, and that people will spot things that you may not have noticed yourself. Once you've gotten to the point where you've written a draft and you've combed through it and you've got your budget, before you're ready to submit, we recommend that you just take a little reality check. And we call it that because we want to make sure your project is really doable. If you're going to commit to it, we want to make sure that you really feel that you, for example, have the time. Think about your other commitments. You may be working, you may have a family, your pH treatment may be a big time consumer, and many of us just have a range of other responsibilities. And so we want to be sure that you truly feel that you can follow through on the commitment for this project that you propose. We also want to make sure that you really have assessed whether you're physically able to do the project. And basically we ask that because we know that some of you have PH yourselves or may have other health issues of your own or in your family that could make completing the project a struggle. So please think that through very carefully and try to commit only to what you believe you really can handle. We also want you to think about whether or not you can find access to everything that you will need. And that's part of your research project, part of the price checking, for example, etc. And it may be that you're not sure where to find some of the help or resources that you need. But I think if you can at least answer the question that you can figure out where to look for those resources at this early stage, I think you're on the right road. If you're completely uncertain how to attack the project, you might want to think about taking a different tack or pursuing a somewhat different idea. I think I'm out of sync with my slides and I'm trying to get back. Excuse me for a moment. All right, the next thing I'd like to do is just present a couple of brief looks at some projects that were funded in the past as a point of comparison for you as you're developing your ideas. One of them was, we called it Bears with Backpacks. And this project was designed to help children who had to use medication pumps and yet still wanted to be able to be around other children, be able to explain why they were using the pump, and be able to just mix and have fun and normalize their experience. And so the mother of a child who had died of PH, I'm sorry, not died of PH, the child was living with PH. She was diagnosed very young, and eventually the family came up with this wonderful idea of using a teddy bear, creating a little toy backpack that was bear size that could go with the bear, so that while the child had a pump and a special bag to cover it up, the bear also had the pump and the special bag, and it made it very easy for the child to feel more comfortable, to feel less embarrassed, and to even begin to educate others about what this pump and this medication was all about. It was something tangible for the kids. They called it the Furry Friends project, and I believe more than 60 children have already received these. It was just something that made life easier and more fun with PH. We also had a project that was done recently to create a poster about PH, just an informational poster that was based on the Big Bad Wolf and the Three Little Pigs story. And we call it the Huff and Puff poster. The idea was to use that notion of a wolf that was huffing and puffing. In this poster he was shown with an oxygen tank and so forth. And this became a very simple way to introduce what is PH. These posters were created in quantity, and they were given out to our support group leaders around the country. They've been widely distributed and been very popular. And we presented them at conference as well, and have found that many people have enjoyed using them and found them to be a very easy, approachable way to talk about PH. Now, I'm going to wrap up by just going over the schedule of our review of awards. As you know, January 27th is the date the applications are due, so you do have about 2 weeks to continue preparing your ideas. In March of this, it says 2011, it's supposed to say March 2012, our review committee will meet and go over all of the applications and discuss them. The review committee, incidentally, is made up of a variety of leaders in PHA, and together we will cull through those that we consider to be possibilities for grants. I want you to know that in this process, by the way, there's not a need to feel that your application needs to be perfectly polished and unchangeable when you send it in. Our process is open and encouraging in the sense that if we see merit to an idea in something that you've proposed, but we have some questions or concerns about it, we are likely to come back to you after the review process and talk with you about possibly making a few changes or incorporating some different elements to help strengthen your project so that it can be funded. So I hope that you will take that to heart and be submitting ideas that are as far as you can take them, but realize that it's not an open and shut case. April 2011 is when our awards will be announced, and at that point we will be preparing for you to start the one-year process of going through your project. So that's, in a nutshell, what we think you need to know to be ready, but I'm sure there are many other things that you would like to know. So I'd like to open the call now for your questions.
Wonderful. I'm going to unmute the lines. This is
The
Debbie
conference
Castro
has been unmuted.
with Volunteer Services at PHA. And you can either use the raise hand function in the web chat, or you can just say your name and where you're calling from, and if you have any questions or if you have any ideas.
I'd like to add as well that there are other examples of projects that have been funded that are on the PHA website on the page that's about the Lantos Grant Program. So that's an easy way for you to look up exactly what has been done and see if that can help to shape your thoughts. Does anyone have any particular concerns about either the budget portion or the narrative portion of the application?
So this is Debbie with PHA. I'm going to actually call out on Nicole Cooper because I know she's on the line. Nicole, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was on mute.
Oh, okay. Nicole, I have a question for you. When you dialed in for this conference call, what were you thinking about?
Getting more education and finding out more about the Tom Lantos Act and exactly what is it, what ideas are you looking for. Because I know about the poster that came out and the bear, but as you're talking, I was just going online to look at the other ideas that just, what type of ideas were y'all looking to, what are y'all looking for?
Okay. I know you've been involved in the past, so I just wasn't sure if you had come with an idea or with a sense.
Well, I had kind of an idea, and it was kind of something that I already kind of talked to you and Molly about previously, but I just wanted more clarification. Could that idea be tweaked a little? So.
Okay. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing right now, we can definitely talk, and anybody can talk and contact Molly for more information and to bounce ideas. We're more than happy to help with that.
Oh, you want me to say what it is?
Well, it's up to you if you want to. I mean, we have 30 minutes, and we have an opportunity to talk about that too. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, if I could ask Sally, who joined us in the call. Sally, if you had any questions.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I am a quilter, and I have a whole bunch of quilting friends, and we love to make stuff out of fabric. So I was considering making quilts, and, it would be different sizes so that a small child would get a different one from an adult. That was a possibility. Making a bag to carry the pump, a nice-looking bag, and also making fabric-covered magnetic bulletin boards that you can hang up. They're real attractive, and it could be used in places that could catch someone's attention. So that was 3 ideas that I had that are all related to the fabric, and I have a supplier for the fabric, and I have a big supply of volunteers to help do it.
So, Sally, this is Katie at PHA, and just to throw an idea at you that you can do whatever you want with, but I know something, since one of the goals of these awards and the project that comes out of these awards is to raise awareness about pH or create some kind of bigger knowledge in the community about the disease. One possibility that comes to my mind is that, if you were going to make quilts and donate them to any organization, PH related or not, maybe even to a hospital or something, you could include a little information tag talking about what PH is and about the background of your project and what you decided to do it. So that's just one, you should definitely fill out your own thoughts, but that's just one little example that comes to my mind of how you can turn something that you already really enjoy doing and are planning to do with your time into something that's a little bit of an awareness raiser.
Okay. I didn't know whether to contact hospitals or PH centers or the support group leaders.
Well, I can tell you when we, this is Debbie from PHA with Volunteer Services. I work with support groups, and when we, Donna Catarini was a support group leader. She is no longer leading the group, but when she was leading the group, the idea for the flyer, the Huff Puff poster, that came out of her group, and she worked with us, and we determined how we could distribute it to the leaders. So if your idea has the opportunity for our groups to utilize it, even they could get involved in the quilting piece, or they could get involved in the messaging. There's ways for leaders to get involved. In addition, you can pass like order forms if you wanted them to order the bags or the quilts or the bulletin boards, for awareness raising. So you could definitely work with our support group leaders.
Okay.
If it's applicable.
One thing I do think it's important to note, and it may have gotten mentioned in the presentation already, but just to reiterate, is that these projects cannot be fundraisers. They're awareness raising projects. So the one thing that you can't do with your bulletin boards or your backpacks is sell them. But you could definitely create a little form that allows people to say what they're interested in and resubmit that to you so that your team could create some customized items.
Okay.
That's a good point. So when I think about your idea, the bags would have to be in the same way that we have the bears with backpacks, or even the bear backpack. Like those two different tools were to help children as an educational and coping tool. What could a bag do as a tool for education or coping? For the quilts, how could you use the quilts as an opportunity to raise awareness? The bulletin boards, the magnetic bulletin boards, I definitely see an opportunity with your outreach to medical professionals. So you have a lot of resources, and you already know about those resources. You've got the supplies, you have the supplier, and you have a team of volunteers. You just have to find the connection to what you could do. What need would you be solving in the community? And so you could continue to talk to us, and we could help you figure out which of those three ideas, or maybe a combination of the three ideas, could be this wonderful campaign that you put out that would make a difference. That's my thought. I don't know if Molly or Katie at PHA have a thought on that.
This is Molly. Along those lines, I was also thinking that one idea that you may want to develop with us or on your own is that distribution system, because it sounds like you're very well situated with the creating part of these original items. And then when they are created, you're going to need a way to identify who would need them and how you would get the items to them. And so I know you mentioned, for example, working through support groups or working through others who are close to PH patients. But you might want to think some more about the process for getting those items to the people that you've created them for.
Okay. I'm very new at this, so
yes.
I appreciate the feedback, and I'm scribbling frantically as you're talking.
That's okay. You can also slow down.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to let you know that if I didn't answer right away, it was because I was writing.
Sure. Sally, what is your connection to PH?
I have PH.
Okay.
I've diagnosed 6 years ago.
Ah, okay. And are you involved in a support group, or are you in contact with other PH patients in your area?
I'm in a support group. There isn't one in my town, but there's one about an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to Columbia, the Midlands group in South Carolina.
Oh, it's Doug Taylor.
Yeah, Doug Taylor's group.
Okay.
Good.
Because within that group, that might be another place to knock around some ideas about once you've decided on something that you want to make, how you would share that through the community and find people who could be uplifted by it.
Okay. So uplifting is a viable need to fill?
Well, you could reach underserved populations, like the bear was a way to let children see that it's not so scary because they go to school and there's no kid that has Flowland, but you know, and their toys don't look like them, you know, so they don't see it. So that's sort of a way to help. So, you know, how could that help a population of people that have a need? And, you know, uplifting is a need for these underserved populations of children.
Well, what about, too, Debbie and Katie, I'm going to ask you who've been involved with the program a little bit longer than I have, but what about, for example, when Sally talked about making the bag that would be a more attractive way to be able to camouflage your pump? It sort of normalizes life. It sort of demedicalizes life, and in that sense I think it's uplifting, or, you know, gives a more positive experience of one element of the illness, and I'm wondering if you feel that that is a need to fill with this project.
Okay. Yeah, I have the wonderful bag that Acredo has given me to use, and it's very functional, and it's black, which is fine in the winter when I'm wearing black shoes. But I've made several very colorful ones that, you know, go with different outfits and all that, that doesn't look like a medical pack.
Right. And it makes you feel better to have something on your person like that that's more fashionable, and it makes you feel like you look good. And
yes.
Mm-hmm. So Katie and Debbie, do you see that as being within the scope of the project, of the grant program?
I mean, I'm not really sure, and I think it's sort of relevant to point out that the review committee is not made up of PHA staff people. There are actually no PHA staff people on the committee. It's entirely made up of community advocates and other representatives. So I would feel a little uncomfortable personally sort of rendering an opinion about if that's exactly the thing that the committee would want, because I don't have any idea. But it definitely seems like a possibility, and I think you know, my guess is that they would definitely think very highly of that. It certainly goes along with the idea of normalizing life for young people, is, you know, being able to serve a similar purpose for other folks as well. I think the other possibility is that you could look outside the community if there are other folks who would benefit from this. This is not a Lantos grant, but it's a grant project.
Oh.
Ooh,
I'm sorry. I figured it out. It was somebody's line. I just muted it.
Well done. So I don't know. I think I was just saying that this sounds like a really great idea. The other option, or sort of something that you could do simultaneously, would also be to think about reaching outside the PH community and thinking if there are needs, if there are folks in your area or in your world who would benefit from quilts or bulletin boards, and connecting it, you know, sharing some information about PH along with this gift that you're giving. So I don't know. In my mind, lots of different ways to approach that. That all sound great. What do you think, Debbie?
Well, you were saying something that made me think about what quilts do, and that's keep people warm. And a associated disease that people have with PH is scleroderma.
Oh, scleroderma, yeah.
And the blood circulation, some people have Raynaud's. Like my sister has pulmonary hypertension, but she also has Raynaud's, and that makes her fingers and toes really cold. You could quilt or crochet or knit gloves and booties or something that you can give to members of the community that are fashionable or that are cute, things that, people won't look at them and say, you're wearing gloves indoors. They'll look at them and say, oh my God, what is that? Or you could put PH, the periwinkle ribbon on there, so people will, if you're indoors in a movie theater or in an office and it's in the summertime, some people still need gloves, and it's kind of weird. So you could do something that would counter the stigma of having poor blood circulation and that, the difference, the people that are cold when everybody else is warm, and maybe make something that is a conversation piece. So periwinkle, why periwinkle? Because that's the color a pulmonary hypertension patient's lips turn when they lack oxygen. So it could keep you warm. It could be a talking point. And then quilting, quilts keep you warm. So you could actually make quilts where each patch has something educational, and maybe people who have PH and scleroderma can educate while they warm themselves up. I don't know, just sort of talking out loud.
Well, lots of ideas to play with, Sally.
Okay. Well, I just need to get busy on doing the paperwork part of it now. I appreciate all the information, and I feel much more comfortable about doing this now. I was really scared to try for a grant.
Oh, go for it. We're really excited that you're considering it.
And we were hoping to make the process seem more doable, so I'm glad we've reached that goal with you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, so I was thinking, when I was talking to you and Molly about the Resource Center,
yes.
So I was thinking about a resource guide. Where though I know that a lot of PH patients, especially like the younger PH patients, when they get diagnosed, like I was saying, they don't know where to go. The biggest question is about insurance. Who can help them with if they have questions as far as finances, if they have to have a surgery or medication, and that's that's beyond the PH family on Facebook a lot. And so I was thinking about a resource guide, because I know, when I first got diagnosed and not knowing anything, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to research everything, and you have to, get help with things that you don't know about, i.e. disability, Social Security, just the health insurance, the medication. So I was thinking if it was a guide, and the guide could, everyone in PH family is not just like local, it's people from all over, who had the question. So I don't know. I was just, and then it could be, the support group leaders can have it for their support group, and if people would like one, I guess if they could offer it at the PHA store, and then, for caregivers who may have, for caregivers who are helping to take care of the PH patient, it's easier to know, okay, you go from point A to point B, from point B to point C. Just some type of a resource for PH patients of where to go, where to turn.
I agree that that's a very important need. I think that new diagnosis is just an overwhelming process, and I know the way you described it to me the other day, Nicole, certainly reinforced that. And so I do think that allowing people to have places to turn, and I mean, in a way you're almost describing sort of a roadmap of what to expect when you're newly diagnosed, and I think that that's got a lot of merit to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to see if we have 10 minutes left on the call, but there was somebody who came in the second half of the call, and I wondered if Steve is on the line still, and if you have any questions or would like to just tell us a little bit about yourself. Steve, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we did get in I did get in kind of late. We were trying to put the kids to bed, and we sort of had a little chocolate thing going here. It's very interesting. We are caregivers of a 4-year-old twin who, Elizabeth, who has been was diagnosed about 9 months after she was born. And so we're always interested. We live here in Florida. We're over here in Tampa Bay, so we're about an hour and a half away from Orlando, so we'll definitely be at the conference. And we're always interested in anything that we can do to learn about and help with PH, and particularly pediatric PH. We just haven't, there wasn't a lot of information out there 3 or 4 years ago for us, and the one caller she caught my attention because we went through the same thing when we first got the diagnosis. It was pretty devastating, and we just didn't know where to go. And the PH Association was just a godsend. Between them and Children's Hospital in Boston, we've learned that we've just about become cardiologists by our own right. So it's been a long road, and we see a lot of improvement in Elizabeth, and she, for all intents and purposes, looks very normal on the outside. We hope it continues to improve, but we're always open to new developments, and right now she's doing only oral meds, so thank God for that.
That's wonderful.
And Steve, are there other folks that you're in touch with in the pediatric PH community whose lives would be improved by anything that you think would make a good project?
Everyone that we are in touch with, we know through the Facebook contacts.
Yes.
And what we see with the backpacks, the quilt, that sort of thing has been, really, I can see a lot of help there. Now, there is a support group in Lakeland, Florida, about 35, 40 miles from us, and we have a lot of problems getting there because of its timing. And with 3 kids, every day is a busy day. But as far as the pediatric end of it goes, we don't really have anyone close by. So we look forward to the conferences, and we look forward to whatever conversation and threads pop up through Facebook.
Are there any particular needs that you've noticed just as a parent of a child that maybe haven't been addressed yet that might lead you to an idea for one of these grants?
Well, we really haven't given it that much thought. We've been sort of caught up in our own little world here, and
I know, that's plenty right there.
Yeah, but we're always looking out for other folks to see. As a matter of fact, there was a lady over here who we have a little gift store that also serves as our town's little post office, and she was one of the clerks in there, and she just recently passed away. She was on the transplant list and just ran out of time. So anything, we're just here to try to give our support and help wherever we can help. One of the needs that we see in our immediate area here in the Tampa Bay area is there are no specialists, no pediatric PH specialists. There are cardiologists who are very good. We see one right now, but as far as a depth of knowledge with pediatric pulmonary hypertension, it's just not here. You literally have to get out of this state, or at least get up to Gainesville, to Shands Teaching Hospital. And other than that, there's no immediate thing that I can think of right offhand.
Okay.
So professional education, that would help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds like you have, understandably, like you have a lot on your hands, and you want to give this idea some more thought. I don't know if you joined us in time to hear, if you're already knowledgeable about the fact that this will be recorded, so you can definitely go back and watch the whole thing through and listen to all the comments if you're interested in doing that. It seems to me like, if this is something that you decide that you are interested in pursuing right now, that there are some different options that you could do to turn that idea of some pediatric medical education into a project that would be helpful to the broader community. I'm not sure whether it would be creating a video where you had some presentations and tips by pediatric PH specialists, and then provided that to other parents so that they could have that resource even if they lived in a small area like you, or if it would be something more like a brochure or a flyer specifically for pediatricians to help them learn about the disease for the first time. I don't know. I think some different options, but it sounds like you're giving it good thought.
Well, because we went through a bad experience with several cardiologists when we got the initial diagnosis, and it's because we know people who use the cardiology practice. They think the world of these cardiologists. We personally don't, but and in all fairness, we're just clueless. And our problem with the whole thing was not with their so much lack of expertise with pulmonary hypertension, but the lack of follow-up. I mean, it took our pediatrician and Dr. Ivy in Denver and another a brand new pediatric pulmonologist to save her life, and they did it by reaching out beyond our immediate area, and we got a bed with Dr. Marks and Dr. Mullen in Boston.
Yeah.
So the professionalism is something that we find difficult to resolve in our minds. It's the lack of follow-up was just we just look at these people and think, why didn't you do this? Right. You're the cardiologist. So there is a need to educate the professional community here. I don't know how far they want to take it, whether they have any desire to get any more involved in pediatric pulmonary hypertension. The local cardiologist that we see is part of that same practice. Very fortunately for us, he did his residency with Dr. Marks in Boston, so they're all good friends. And we were very fortunate to hook up with this one here locally. He's their eyes and ears for Boston. But other than that, and I really don't know how to reach out to them. The conference is coming up in Orlando, but it's very pricey. And a lot of these folks don't. If it's not a time issue with them, it's a money issue. And but we'll see. We're constantly talking to them and reminding them of this. For instance, the conference coming up, and in California, we did run into one of her cardiologists from the ICU over here at St. Joseph's Hospital in Tampa. So maybe we are making some inroads. I don't know. I would like to think we are, and if we aren't, maybe someone else is, and that's a good thought. That's a good thing.
Certainly sounds like it. Yeah, keep up the contacts. That's great.
We keep beating them up.
It's a long-term process, which we inside PHA are also thinking a lot about and trying to plan for. And it's very much on our mind is that the primary care level being far more alerted to what is PH and what should they do if they suspect it, so that people can get to proper care as fast as possible. Exactly,
and that's been one of our main issues right now is reaching out to the medical community and making sure that they focus on that. Mm-hmm. We don't want anybody. It's so terribly misdiagnosed, and it just left a bad taste in our mouth. But thank God Elizabeth is doing so well that
that is terrific.
We're able to overcome a lot of that. So.
Well, we are really glad that you joined us today because all of these things that you're mentioning are very important.
Well, I'll get back on and play back the parts I've missed, because my wife and I have participated in these things before, and we just, with our travel schedule the way it is, and we just always, we get the notifications, and something comes up, and we lose track, and before we know it, it's 10 o'clock at night, and oh, another one, you know.
That can happen.
Well, we're at the 9 o'clock hour. I want to thank everybody for joining us on the call and thank our speaker, Molly, for her wonderful presentation on making a difference in the PH community and how to apply for a Lantos Community Service Award. Thank you, everybody. The recording will be emailed to all participants. Thanks so much.
And thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.